guys, what's up and welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about an extremely strange case that frankly reminds me a little bit of the Satanic Panic, which was prevalent in the 80s and 90s, where a lot of cases were attributed to satanic rituals, even though actually that was proven to not really be true, or to be a reach, or to be alarmism. And this case kind of reminded me of that. It's not identical, but you'll see why. It's very strange. However, before we get into that, I did want to thank today's sponsor, which is Hunt a Killer. I don't know about you, but one of the things I personally enjoy when watching horror movies is deciphering the clues in order to figure out who the murderer is. What if I told you there was a game where you could do just that and even make it into a game night activity? Hunt a Killer isn't just about solving a murder based on the clues you receive in each box. It's about a narrative in which you get backstories on the suspects and seeing a story unfold. Hunt a Killer starts at $25 a box, so if you're trying to go out less or eat out less like I am, it's a great way to stay home with entertainment without breaking the bank. Here are a few things included in my first box. I personally really enjoy feeling like an official detective with files and printed official documents. It really makes it feel more real. One thing I really appreciate as well is part of the proceeds for each box go to the Cold Case Foundation, an organization that is dedicated to helping with real life cold cases. Right now, just for my viewers, you can go to huntaKiller.com/readytoglare and use Ready to Glare for 20% off your first box. Again, make sure to use the code READYTOGLARE for 20% discount and to show your support for the channel. Thank you again to Hunt a Killer for sponsoring this video. So the case we're talking about today, Kansas woman convicted of decapitating ex's mother blamed conversational hypnosis. I feel like I may have been a victim of covert conversational hypnosis, Rachel Hilliard wrote in a letter to the judge overseeing her case. Now, the reason why I said this reminded me of the Satanic Panic is because before you actually get to the article, the shortened title is Woman Beheads Ex's Mom Blames Botched Exorcism. Now, I'm gonna say here and now, I'm not a big believer in hypnosis, so I tend to not easily believe that someone is hypnotized, especially when it comes to their excuse as to why they committed a crime. It just seems too convenient. A Kansas woman accused of decapitating her ex's mother by using steak knives was found guilty of murder this week. Wichita's Rachel Hilliard was convicted on Thursday, February 6th on a charge of first-degree premeditated murder for the killing of Mickey Davis at Hilliard's home nearly 3 years ago, according to an arrest affidavit obtained by Oxygen. Davis was the mother of the woman's former romantic partner, prosecutors explained. We're just pleased with the verdict. The jury was able to follow the state's evidence and come to the right conclusion, Sedgwick County District Attorney Mark Bennett told Oxygen.com. Bennett said that Hilliard killed Davis without any provocation, kind of out of nowhere, in the April 2017 attack. It's a very shocking crime, Bennett said, commending the jury for their work on the troubling case. The hardest part of the case was making it make sense to the jury because it was such a senseless act of extraordinary violence, he explained. To listen to crimes of violence like this, all of us owe those folks a debt of gratitude. Bennett said Hilliard now faces a mandatory life sentence. She'll be eligible for parole in 50 years. Frankly, I obviously don't know what the motivations of Hilliard would be to kill her ex's mother. I don't know if they maybe had a rocky relationship, though I think that would have been part of the evidence that they would have mentioned. I just don't understand how hypnotism could lead to that. And like I said, I don't really believe in hypnotism that much, so maybe I just don't understand. It just seems very convenient to me that right when she commits this crime, she's hypnotized. And I wonder, what had she been hypnotized before? Because at that point, it would be even harder for me to believe that she was hypnotized just this one time ever in her life, and now something happens. Because if there was an actual prior record of her going to hypnosis things every week, or like her partaking in weird hypnotic therapy rituals, I don't know, then it would still be hard to believe. But particularly because it's just this random one time. Wichita police first responded to the scene on April 9th, 2017 after Davis's 9-year-old grandson called 911. He told operators his father's ex-girlfriend was hurting his grandmother and was also trying to kill him. Out of nowhere, she pushes his grandmother to the ground and begins beating her up, Bennett said. Grandma looks at the 9-year-old, says, "Help." He runs to the truck, locks himself in the truck, and calls 911. The boy later jumped out of his grandmother's white Ford Ranger and took off running down the block. When officers arrived at Hilliard's house, they made a sickening discovery. After peeking in the home's garage, authorities at first mistook Davis' body for a mannequin, according to the arrest affidavit. Upon closer inspection, officers realized it was Davis' headless body with pools of blood and 2 steak knives found by her body. Hilliard was discovered in one of the house bathrooms and taken into custody, with officers claiming she rambled about deja vu and hearing voices during her arrest. Davis' grandson later told police he and his grandmother had come to Hilliard's home to retrieve his father's belongings, who had left them behind following the couple's split. Hilliard was declared unfit to stand trial in January 2018. That summer, forensic evaluators deemed her competent following treatment at a state psychiatric facility. Now, that's actually something I was going to say. I strongly believe that mental illness is far more likely and believable as a reason why this happened than hypnosis. Because if she was hearing voices, I don't want to diagnose whatever she might or might not have. But if she was hearing voices, that's a lot more consistent and believable to me that she has some kind of mental illness and maybe was having some kind of episode and then she did what she did, which doesn't make it more excusable, but it makes a lot more sense to me than hypnotism. Also, the fact that a 9-year-old had to go through that, had to see his grandma being beat up and had to hide and call 911 and run away. I hope that 9-year-old boy is okay, but I can't imagine how that would traumatize someone, just seeing that and then knowing what happened after. Because the sheer violence of what was done, beating up was obviously bad enough, but the sheer violence of beheading. At times during her trial, she characterized the killing of her former boyfriend's mother as an overreaction, prosecutors said, but on other occasions, she supposedly claimed she needed to decapitate Davis to free her soul so it could reach heaven. Hilliard also wrote several long, paranoid, and incoherent letters to the judge overseeing her case in which she repeatedly insisted that a botched exorcism drove her to kill Davis. See, now this is where I become a little bit, I don't want to say cynical as much as, although I do believe this person is not mentally stable, I also wonder how much of I'm hearing voices and things like that could be a ploy to get less time because the mental illness is what affected it. It wasn't just a cold-blooded murder, but it was the product of an untreated illness. And while I don't like assuming that people are faking illnesses, we know it's been known to happen. The insanity plea, we've known people who have pretended to be insane in order to get less time or get a little bit of leniency. So I'm not saying it's for sure what she's doing, but I'm just saying it's a possibility. And also, it could be a possibility that she's also religiously indoctrinated in some way where she's become an extremist. If she believes anything of what she says, she could really be a religious extremist who either was convinced or convinced herself that she needed to do these extreme things in order to go to heaven or something. So here there's an example of one of the letters that Hilliard wrote to the judge, and it says, "Fear the Lord, Jesus died for us. Pentecostal, Protestant, Catholic equals unfinished pictures. Each has a lens or glasses behind. God sees everything. Mirrors are God's windows." Perhaps religious indoctrination has something to do with it. It could be a mixture of everything, so who knows. It's a fact that 3 days prior to the murder, 2 individuals were in my home conducting what I had been told was an exorcism, Hilliard wrote to Chief Judge Jeffrey Goering in 2017 jailhouse letter obtained by Oxygen. This was actually the second time they'd been to the house. I'm not sure which entity deals with negligent illegal exorcisms, but I can assure you one was conducted. Using all capital letters, Hilliard also referenced haunted houses, aliens, methamphetamines, and claimed she had been put under a trance-like spell. She even doodled crucifixes and spiritual ideas in the letter. "I just want to send this out before they throw me in the psych ward and over-medicate me." She also scribbled, "I'm not going to stand for this. I feel like I may have been a victim of covert conversational hypnosis." This is a shit show. I'm overwhelmed. There's methamphetamines now. There's a supposed exorcism. And then there's covert conversational hypnosis. Listen, I'm not a specialist in what exorcism is or isn't. I have seen my fair share of exorcism movies, and while movies don't represent the truth, I've never heard of hypnosis having to do with exorcism. Now, would I believe the claim that she had an quote-unquote exorcism and then they hypnotized her? No, I don't see what the point would be of doing that. And aside from that, fine, I'm sure that there are some vigilante type exorcists that aren't actually appointed by the church, but there are very few actual exorcists, people who are verified by the church as exorcists. So there's too much stuff going on here. I'm so overwhelmed. Honestly, to me, it would make more sense if mental illness combined with drugs, I feel like that would explain everything by itself. The adding of exorcism and hypnosis makes her sound more like loony and like out there, I don't know if it really does her favors. I don't know if this is going for the insanity plea. I don't know if she actually believes that. It kind of seems like she's ticking all the boxes of what you'd think a crazy ranting person is, like the stereotype of they start screaming about aliens and how they're demons and stuff like that. So I think that's why it's kind of why I'm side-eyeing it, because it seems very tropey, very stereotypical. At one point during her case's proceedings, she dismissed her attorney, Jason Smart, accusing the public defender of belittling and siding with the prosecution. The Wichita Eagle reported in 2017. Hilliard was also hit with 2 contraband charges while incarcerated, but prosecutors said those charges will likely be dismissed. Hilliard's sentencing is scheduled for March 23rd. She'll be in her late 80s by the time she's eligible for parole. Imagine knowing that you're only eligible for parole in your late 80s. That is grim. Then again, the crime was committed, so I'm not really all that empathetic for someone who commits crimes like that. Frankly, I think this case is super overwhelming because there's just a shit show of elements that come in, and it's really hard to tell which one is dominant or which one, let's say, has a higher priority. You know, so like if the mental illness is the first issue and the drugs are a second issue, maybe the hypnosis and exorcism really did happen, but they have nothing to do with why the crime was committed. Does that make sense? And I think that's what's difficult for me to kind of understand is what was the leading cause? Like, what was the leading factor? And sometimes there's more than one leading factor, but there's just so much going on, and it's really hard for me to really buy into the exorcism hypnosis thing because there's no elaboration on what would have happened. There's no elaboration on any different behaviors in the sense of if you're hypnotized, is it possible that you're going to act normal and then just snap and try to murder someone? I don't know the laws of hypnotism, so who knows, but at the same time, it just seems so convenient, you know? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Let me know what you think the leading factor is. For me, it's probably mental illness and drugs put together. You guys can let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you to my patrons as always. Catch you guys next time.